Hello, Jack.
Hey, Bart.
Sorry, you got a hand for us here?
Yes, this is at Encore, Boston Harbor.
Encore Boston Harbor, a place that I will be at tomorrow if they don't kick me out. Okay. Encore Boston Harbor, what's the game size here?
2-5.
And that is a 1,000 cap game, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And we are 1,200 effective, and I cover the villain.
All right. So 1,200 effective. Okay.
So MP1 Limp, Low Jack, who's the main villain, opens to 25, and then folds to Hero, myself in the big blind, looking at Ace of Hearts, King of Diamonds.
Ace of Hearts, King of Diamonds. So is this pot straddled or not?
No, it's not.
Okay, this is just a sometimes straddle. So MP1 limps, low jack to 25 hero with Ace of Hearts, King of Diamonds in the big blind. Seems like a very standard 3-bet.
Yep. So I'm bump it up to 90.
Okay.
And the limper folds, and then the low jack calls.
So limper folds, fold, and low jack, who isolated the limper, calls, and we are away to probably like 185 to 190, something like that.
Yep, that's what I had.
Okay.
So flop comes out, jack of spades, nine of spades, three of hearts.
Jack of spades, nine of spades, three of hearts. And this is a 3-bet pot. So front door spades, you do not have a spade in your hand. And the board is quite connected here. Okay.
Yep, I still, I put out small continuation bet, about third pot, 60.
All right. So hero bet 60. And I'm going to ask the resident solver in residence, Nate, who is in the live chat here, who's probably runs through a lot of these sims more than I do off of the top of my head. Obviously, you can bet a much larger volume of hands when you take a small sizing, right? Like when you go 60. But I don't think you can bet every single board in this particular configuration because the low jack, I mean, you did size normally. I mean, it's not like you went 25 to 60, so the low jack should be folding out. He's not defending, with 100% of his hands. With that being said, though, with no spade in your hand, I don't know if I'm going to be betting this flop all that much. Now, you might counter and say, well, what if the guy bets? I think it depends on his sizing. I think you're supposed to definitely continue with the spade. If you check, you might even bet that. But this one doesn't really seem to resonate with me as a bet all that much. It's not like betting 8-7-6, monotone or something like that. But that's just my first instinct here. But anyways,
And that's very valid. It's kind of plays into what keeps happening after too. But yeah, I mean, a good portion. I'm just c betting there a lot. So, but I agree. I feel like this board, it's maybe not always. So I bet 60. Villain calls.
and by the way, sometimes too, as someone's pointing out in the live chat, when you have a board like this and you do bet, actually, because the board's connected, you actually might just find yourself either betting a larger sizing or checking, as opposed to say betting 1/3 because of the connection and the draw heaviness of the board. So the pot is 305. Okay, onto the turn.
And so at this point, yeah. So low jack calls. So I'm wondering, obviously, what could he be calling with? Could be some queen tens, spade draws, hijack. So that the turn comes a four of diamonds.
Okay.
So with it being kind of in mind, I was sort of imagining him calling again with like a good portion of, I don't have a spade in my hand, good portion of spade draws, or like a queen 10, right? Just, I was mainly thinking draws because I kind of thought that he would raise in certain situations if he had like an ace jack, especially if it was like ace jack with the ace of spades or something. So I put him on a lot of draws. So when the turn comes a four of diamonds, which is obviously relatively blank to the draws,
Mm-hmm.
I decide to size up here.
What did you bet?
So I bet right around pot. I bet 325.
Now, I will say again, off of the top of my head, even though your small sizing might be a very, very infrequent type of option that you're supposed to do on this particular board, with your hand, say it's just slivers. Say you do this with like ace king off, like just slit, like very, very small percentage of the time. I would think that you probably would bet here on a brick for large sizing. I mean, obviously it's good to have it's obviously good to have, some, structure your cbet and stuff with good backdoor equity, but this is one of the biggest bricks in the deck. And the other thing too is that because you took a small sizing on the flop, obviously that lends itself where the guy is going to be calling like a lot more. Like he could easily call with any pair in a spade, probably like sixes plus here, sixes, sevens, eights, with a spade in it, to the 1/3 sizing. But when you start taking, say, 2/3 sizing, like which is the probably sizing that's chosen when you do bet, a lot of those hands have to fold off. But when you start a bet for very, very small sizing and then you get a complete brick, the whole reason why you can bet large on a complete brick is because of the fact that they are so wide defending, and this is like a total brick. So hero bets 325 here. Again, it's kind of hard to, if your 1/3 sizing isn't really taken on the flop, it's kind of hard to put ourselves in this particular spot, but that's the thinking of it. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So you're on board with this, with kind of where this play is going.
It's hard. Well, it's pretty hard for me to get. I don't think I'd be taking 1/3 on the flop. You know what I'm saying? So this is this is part of the reason, because now all of a sudden you start really over bluffing here if you're not structuring correctly. So.
Yeah. Okay. So what and what was interesting here was like the little player background was he was late 30s, Asian gentleman, seemed like a thinking player. Wasn't seemed like he was like kind of, I don't want to say he was tight, but he was kind of tight. And so what was interesting is when I made that bet, he really didn't put a lot of thought before he was putting in calling chips. I thought that was interesting. Didn't take him that long to make a decision to call me.
On the turn here.
On the turn, yeah. And again, it was like, almost like it was a pot-sized bet, 325, maybe even, slightly, very, very slightly over.
So the pot's 955 now, right?
Yeah.
You would think that his hand's got to be comprised of a lot of Jack X here, right? Wouldn't you think? When you go 325 on turn, it's interesting. Like if I put myself in your opponent's spot, like I said, I'm calling sevens, eights, tens, blah, 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 blah. Now, let's say I had tens here. Now, obviously, I'm still going to call with any Jack. And any Jack is better than having tens just because of the fact that if I'm behind to an overpair, I have more equity with any Jack, right? It's better probably for me to call with like a 9 here, like an 8-9 than like tens because of the fact that I might have better equity, right? If you're ahead. So I'm trying to put myself in your opponent's spot here. Like, am I calling with tens when you go huge bet here and I don't pick up spades? I would probably be doing a fair amount of folding off. It's pretty close, but because, the reason why I'm saying that is because he should be left with somewhat of a strong range or draw when he calls here, which kind of lends me to, like, if you get like a red deuce here, I don't know, man. Because like you sometimes might win against totally naked draws that aren't going fast, like king, queen of spades. Like you have a sliver of showdown value that he might not bluff with. And, are you just trying to play balls to the wall to get the guy off of a jack? This is me thinking ahead here.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was thinking very, very similar. But the river comes and it's kind of it changes up everything. So the river ends up coming the ace of spades.
Well, that does change everything, doesn't it? So the river's an ace of spades, so the front door now comes in, right? Well, I think now you probably have to check and evaluate, right?
Yeah. Well, this was the part that I kind of went back and forth on. So I did end up doing that. I check. And then not too long after the villain goes all in.
So this is the low jack all in for 725. Here's the thing.
So the weirdest, just one thing I want to say, the weirdest part about this, I thought was that when he had made that call on the turn, like I'm thinking like set 2 pair maybe, obviously there's draws too that would come in, but then him ripping all in was just really confusing. But that's just, what I thought in real time. But
here's the thing. So when we take a look at his range of calling the large bet here on the turn, right? Like obviously he's got some front door spades, right? And, The only thing that I would say is that, you start to get into these mind games where it's like, what do you bet this much with a flush? Isn't he looking for a call? With no backdoor flush draw coming in on turn, I guess he can still have queen 10 of spades, queen 10 suited to represent maybe front door spades, something like that, which is open-ended, or hand like 8-10 suited if he defends with that to represent, say, front door spades. But the other hand that you lose to, the other hand that you lose to also is ace jack. I don't know if there's really a difference. I mean, if this guy is going to jam a flush, ace jack, again, it obviously should be bet when the guy, when you get checked to, ace jack should be bet. The all-in sizing is interesting, although it's still not even over the size of the pot. But I think the most important thing that I'm going to say here is that, kind of as I always preach this about live players, especially at 2-5, you can fold, and I guess you could say you can overfold way, way more often in these spots because of the fact that live players don't find hands that have showdown value and turn them into bluffs, the ones that they are somehow supposed to have. Now, in this case, when you take such a huge sizing on the turn, if he's only left with like Jack X, I don't even know what he gets here that he wants to turn into a bluff. Like, let's say, for example, you had bet less on the turn and he has some 9X that he wants to turn into a bluff now, but you're never going to see like Queen Jack like move all in here at the end. I think that might even be pretty far up in his, I don't even know if he needs to turn that into a bluff anyways. So if you believe me in my experience here, then you're really only left with open-ended straight draws that have busted out that we're trying to represent this, which is Queen 10 and 10-8. Now, you don't block any of those, but still, I don't know if I can make this call.
That was exactly what I was thinking, is like, those two obviously candidates is, where he had missed. I can't see him doing this with ace jack. And again, it was like, part of me was thinking, maybe he flopped 2 pair or flopped a set, but I couldn't see him doing that. And that was, kind of the other side of this. Like, I can't see him going all in on that river with those. But
before you say anything, one other thing just quickly of note here too, because I want to read a comment. Someone said that, some people are talking about would he, should he call Queen 10 suited here to the overbet in the turn? That becomes a profitable call if you're going to represent front door spades. But the thing that I wanted to pick out here was that Cristiano Morsecci says a lot of his medium weak flush draws should fold the turn now. But the thing about, if you take a look at this texture, there are no dry flush draws. Every medium flush draw is at least a combo draw, right? When you have a board of Jack 9, 3, 4, you're going to have a flush draw with at least a gut shot or a pair. I mean, unless he's got, 5, 6, maybe like 6, 8. Like, you'd have to really, really, I guess that might even be the only one, right? 7, 8 is a bottom end gut shot. I think 6, 8 might be the only one. I'm talking about like connecting cards, obviously, like if you had like King Deuce or something like that, but King 10, King Queen.
Honestly, his pacing of calling the turn made me think either King Queen of spades or Queen 10 of spades, where it's just you have the whole board covered. You have so much on the draw, or it's just kind of because even if he had a set or two, like I said, set or 2 pair, I understand him calling, but I would also imagine he would be thinking about the call a little bit more than he actually did.
So what did you end up doing here?
I ended up folding.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said you were going to talk yourself into some sort of hero call.
No.
So did you get a reveal?
No.
So you don't know?
No, I don't know.
I think you have to live. I think that you just have to sort of, move on and live to see another day. But I would say that it is interesting because you get into a very unorthodox spot on the turn when you take a sizing that's really not a thing that much on this texture in a 3-bet pot. So it's hard to really sort of envision that particular spot. Now, Nate, one of our content creators, just as an aside, also said that maybe you could even block the river.
That's what I was going to bring up, is like betting like 150 and then just folding.
Well, the only thing about, and the thing about blocking the river is, right, sometimes it induces a raise in a certain situation, but if people aren't going to bluff raise, remember, a block on the river can only be proper if you can get called by worse. There is never, ever a reason for a block bet from out of position if you cannot get called by worse. But of course, the reason why you'd be blocking is to get called by worse, right? To try to like price them in with Jack X or something like that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
now if you had like, for example, like ace, king, king of spades here, where you're blocking like a lot of his flushes, I think that hand would lend itself to way more of a block than like ace, king, no spade. You know what I mean? So, because then if you raise his river, then you're like, what what is this? This is bizarre, right? But anyways, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.